So I thought I would go ahead and make this video right away. This is part 2 of my military service series. In this video I'm going to be covering more specifically the Navy. The last video that I did, part 1, was generally advice for joining the military, somebody who's thinking about joining, brief overview of the different branches. So if you would like to check that out, go ahead and check that out. This video is going to cover the Navy specifically. I was in the Navy. I enlisted in 2004. I got out in 2011. I joined right out of high school. I did not want to go to community college and kind of do the same thing as everybody else. So the recruiter kind of started getting a hold of me as I was getting ready to turn 18, and I didn't really have any other plans. I had an interest in language. At that point, I had already studied Russian and German, and I seemed to really suck at math, but seemed to be really good at language. So I asked him if they had linguists in the Navy or I could do something language related. He said they did, and so it was off to the races. So the Navy appealed to me in particular because I like the tradition of the Navy. I like the idea that people have been going to sea for a really long time, and that going to sea and serving in the Navy is very unique. It's not like land-based branches of service. Um, Being in the middle of the ocean on a ship, especially a warship, is a very interesting feeling. And anyone can, take a cruise or buy a sailboat, but cruising around the world on a billion-dollar warship that could, you know, destroy a small city, uh, that's kind of a whole different ballgame. So, you hear a lot of stories about recruiters misleading you and all that other, stuff. And if that's a concern of yours, um, and you're thinking about going into the Navy, um, I recommend talking to other people about specific questions you have, or you can leave your questions here and I'll do my best to answer them. Overall, I really enjoyed being in the Navy. There were many things about it that were very difficult. Um, it's military service. It's service. You're serving. There's a lot of great things that you get from being in the military, but at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're volunteering to give up a lot of your personal freedoms, some of your personal rights. You are taking on a greater degree of responsibility. You are being held to a higher standard. It's kind of like a fast lane to growing up in many ways. Um, so, some things to consider if you're thinking about joining the Navy. Um, First and foremost, I would say make sure that you're getting a job that you understand what it entails. We have a saying in the Navy that some people really don't like it, and some people, like it a little more than others. It's choose your rate, choose your fate. And in the Navy, your job is called your rate, and basically what it means is if 5 o'clock in the afternoon is rolling around and you and your division are still on the ship working, and these other guys got off work at noon every day, choose your rate, choose your fate. That's just kind of the way that it works. Some jobs you may end up working a lot. You pull into port, everybody else gets off work, you stay at work, right? Just the nature of the game. So you want to do a lot of research and find out what your job entails. If at all possible, find out from people who have done it. That's a good thing to do. And there's another point here to take into account. What you do import may not be the same as what you do out to sea. My job, for example, I was an operations specialist for the first part of my career. Out to sea, we're on the clock all the time, 24/7. I mean, there's, depending on the details of where you are, you might be putting in some pretty serious hours. But my rate was primarily a seagoing rate. So when we get into port, we do a lot of cleaning, a lot of maintenance, light maintenance if that, because we're not a maintenance-oriented job. We get off early a lot, at least on the ship that I was on, assuming you've got a cool chain of command and they're not trying to rake you over the coals. So be aware of the details of the job that you're intending to go into, and find out what's going on in port and out to sea. Brings me to my next point. You're going to want to investigate to find out what your sea-shore rotation is. Okay. If you join the Navy and you're a seagoing rate, it doesn't mean that you're going to spend your entire life out to sea. Some rates, that's more true than others. Again, my job, an operations specialist, I can't remember what the rotation was now, but we're primarily a seagoing rate. That's where we do the majority of our work. So they try to keep us out to sea as much as possible, meaning if you're in for 10 years, you might spend 6 or 7 or whatever out to sea, and just the smaller amounts of time on shore duty. This is really important if you have a family. If you are going into the Navy and you have a family, or you want to have a family, investigate your sea-shore rotation. If you choose a job that's primarily out to sea and you've got a family, that's what you're signing up for. You might be signing up for being out to sea a lot. So make sure you understand that. You're going to want to find out where you can possibly be stationed. That's a huge thing. A lot of people try to go back to where they're from, or near where they're from, right? Or they want to go get stationed in Hawaii or some tropical place. In certain jobs, that's just not a reality. There's some jobs where you're very restricted in where you can go. If you're going to go be a Seabee, for example, that's a very unique world, community within the Navy. So you're going to want to find out what your options are going to be with that, right? Those are kind of the main things that, if you're thinking about joining the Navy, you're going to want to probably clarify for yourself. I think pretty much the only thing that I didn't really know going into the Navy, that kind of caught me by surprise: duty. You'll have duty, more than likely, especially if you're on a ship. Duty is where you basically are on duty, on call, but not on call because you have to stay on the ship in most cases. In my experience, duty, you stay on the ship and you're assigned some sort of watch. So even if you're in port for 7 days, one of those days you might not be going home. You might be staying on the ship, standing some sort of watch. That's a general overview for somebody who might be thinking about joining the Navy. Those are some questions to ask, some things to investigate that I think you will find really helpful and will do you a world of good in the long run. Again, questions, comments, concerns, leave them below. Check out my other videos, and I will be hopefully posting the rest of this series soon.